Good morning. This is Joe Bost with the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance. Hope you all are doing well. I am joined this morning by Speaker of the North Carolina House, Tim Moore. Speaker Moore is a friend of the business community in the Charlotte region and lives just right down the road in Kings Mountain. So we're fortunate to have just a few minutes with Speaker Moore today. So Speaker Moore, thank you for joining us and welcome.
Thanks, Joe. It's good to be with you.
I want to jump right in and talk about the legislative session from last week. But before I do, just want to express our gratitude and appreciation for you and your colleagues acting so quickly in the face of this crisis. We know you set up the Select Committee to address the COVID-19 crisis, and that committee did great work. And so we're appreciative of the bipartisan work that came out of those working groups and your willingness to really lead during this time. So thank you for acting so quickly and helping our region move forward.
Well, you know, when COVID-19 came on the scene, it was something that was unprecedented in any of our lifetimes. And it's an issue that I and other legislators felt like we really needed to see what we could do to go ahead and try to tackle this and be ahead of the curve. We, of course, knew we would be coming into session in April. And my belief was that we did not need to wait until we came in during the normal time of session and just deal with things then, that we really needed to go ahead and get a jump on this. So I appointed 4 different task forces to deal with this issue, everything from education, healthcare, government operations, and then the whole tax thing with unemployment insurance, tax rates, everything else. And so what we did was we made it bipartisan committees. We made bipartisan chairs of the committees, and it was a great collaborative effort. So what we focus on, of course, are things that we can do. I want to touch on the money in a minute because that is very significant. But something that really didn't cost much was a lot of the regulatory reform that we did. Things like, for an individual, your driver's license, going ahead and automatically extending that for 5 months. Car registrations, and then of course in businesses, permits, any kind of continuing education, licensure, basically anything where a deadline was set to expire coming up, go ahead and just moving that out roughly 5 months to give folks relief. So we did that, and really it took a long time to compile all of that information. If you think about how big state government is and how the interplay of that, it took a while to get all that together. So that came together. We also delayed the payment of personal income taxes and business taxes until July 15th instead of April 15th, and something that should be of great help to employers. On unemployment insurance, we actually have waived the first quarter of UI taxes, which is huge and significant because it's going to give employers, particularly these small businesses who are already taking it on the chin, some relief there as well. Additionally, we appropriated $125 million to the Golden Leaf Foundation to be used for short-term low-interest loans, mainly to help for those companies that are working to get the PPP and the EIDL, but to deal with some of the delays that the federal government's run into. And so when it goes to the federal government, it really can't be overstated how significant the federal appropriation is that we've received. So hats off to a wonderful legislative delegation in Washington, both in the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate, and of course, President Trump, who really got out front and took the lead on this. But in real dollars and cents, about $6 billion, a little over $6 billion, has come into North Carolina thus far in federal funds. Of that $6 billion, roughly $2 billion has just passed through to specific areas where it was already designated by the feds. And so that, for everything from schools to nonprofits to hospitals, you name it, the kind of things you would think that need assistance during a healthcare pandemic. Then there was $4 billion in what we call the CARES Act. Of that $4 billion, roughly $500 million went to Mecklenburg County, Wake County, the city of Charlotte, and then Guilford County. So that left $3.5 billion to then be distributed among the rest of state and local government. Of that $3.5 billion, we appropriated last week roughly $1.6 billion, leaving 1.9 there sitting in the bank for us to deal with other issues that come up. But of that 1.6, we've put that into where we see critical needs, resources to hospitals and healthcare providers, everyone from nursing homes, adult care facilities, um, smaller physicians in certain cases, getting personal protective equipment out to all areas of healthcare providers, first responders, you name it, getting the money there for education. Giving example, every one of us who have kids in school have seen how that schedule has been completely upended out of public safety. Well, we know that particularly those kids in, say, kindergarten through fifth grade, we really are going to have to work very hard to make sure that we bring some remedial education to let those kids get caught up and be up to grade level, or else we're going to risk having a whole group of students who are going to be behind the curve, and we just can't let that happen. And so, investing in our universities, for example, is a big thing. We put a lot of money into research and development at our medical schools and schools of public health around the state. Very proud of that. Just an absolutely huge issue, $85 million total. And trying to make sure, really importantly, that we help stabilize hospitals. In the urban areas, in Charlotte, you've got access to great hospitals there in the city and just outside the city. But you drive 30 miles my direction and you keep going further west, some of those challenges and access to hospitals can get acute. And so we wanted to make sure that those rural hospitals that already have more challenging times are stabilized. And right now we all know that hospitals, for example, have not been, I think they're now starting back though, but had not been doing elective procedures, which is actually where they tend to make most of their revenue. So we've drawn things back, taken away the main revenue source for hospitals, and some of whom were already dealing with hard times. And so we know they needed help. So we have a very robust fund in place to take care of the rural hospitals, money for the urban hospitals as well, but there's a real heavy emphasis on rural, and then also funds for our teaching hospitals. So, I could talk an hour about spending $1.6 billion, a lot of money in a lot of great places, but we wanted to make sure we were really getting led on target and getting money out there where it needed to go to deliver the best resources and services to our citizens.
Yeah, I don't think most people quite understand because they don't live it day to day like you do, and what we do on our side of really what state government helps to do on an annual basis, and the oversight that you all have as a legislative body for so many different component parts, whether it's healthcare or education, unemployment, the list goes on and on. So certainly appreciate the swift action and the fact that there's more funds available for whatever resources need them next. So that's really critical moving forward. But talk to us a little bit about session last week. You went through the bill, unanimous in nature. We don't see that very often in the legislature, especially on spending bills. So very, very, very big credit goes to you guys for making it bipartisan. But talk about session. We all saw the images of masks, meeting in committees virtually, just a different look and feel. And as somebody who's the speaker who oversees the body as a whole, describe what it was like for you. There's camaraderie on both sides. A lot of people get along really, really well, regardless of party. So talk to us about how session was from just a personal standpoint.
Well, this has been a unique session in so many ways, but the meetings that we had of the committees, those COVID task force committees, they actually met like we're doing today with a WebEx function. And so instead of coming together and having live meetings where you're all together to observe and practice social distancing, the meetings were done in a remote manner. Now, the session of the House was not done that way, but what we did was we set it up so that you would have longer periods for voting. If folks watching us have ever observed the General Assembly, that when we vote on a bill, the members are debating it, and then it comes time to vote, and everybody's in the chamber, 120 members, and we vote on the bill, and you generally have about 15 seconds to lock in your vote, and the vote's locked and recorded. We adopted special rules that would increase that normal 15 seconds of voting to 40 minutes of voting. And what that would allow is for members to stagger in on a schedule and vote at, so they're not all in there at one time and they're not all in close proximity. And so we used that, although what we found was the chamber is big enough where most members could come and be on the floor and around and still spread out enough where they were 6 feet apart and there wasn't an issue. So it worked actually better than we actually thought it might. And so as a result, we did pass this legislation, and very proud of the fact that it was bipartisan and completely unanimous. I think we had one vote that was 119-1, but when it came in for the final votes, it was 120-0. And I mean, think about that. We've got a wide spectrum of members in there in terms of political ideology and in terms of where they live in the state, and from Manteo to Murphy. And you had the most conservative members over here and the most liberal members over here who came together and voted unanimously for this bill. And that's something I'm extremely proud of. And that took a lot of work to get there. But I think it shows how solid the process was, as well as how strong the policy is in this. So very, very proud of where we are, and hope that bipartisan spirit will continue through the session.
Yeah, I mean, I think it helped, just the sheer transparency of the entire process from beginning to end of last week. Every single member was had the opportunity to engage in the process, whether they were on one of the working groups or not, publicly available to watch online or listen in. And so provided a great opportunity for everyone to be engaged and part of the process. So certainly look forward to hoping that spirit lives on in subsequent sessions. But speaking of subsequent sessions, I know you all are coming back in a couple of weeks. Give us a taste of what we might see in session in a couple of weeks from now.
Well, we're going to assess where we are with the health side of things to see if we can move to essentially a normal function of session where we can have meetings in the way that much more like we've used to have. I don't think it's going to be exactly like that. I think so many things for the foreseeable future are going to be different just because folks are more acute about things. I think there's a lot of people that should have been washing their hands already that are finally going to start washing their hands. I don't ever understand those guys that come out of the bathroom without washing their hands. All right, I'm going to do a PSA about that. That's just common sense. I don't care whether there is a pandemic or something going on. That's just basic common sense. But anyway, I think this has made people think more about hygiene and germs and all that kind of stuff. But that's sort of the minor thing there. But in the way it's affected the business world, education, government, I think you'll see that we'll try to spread out a little bit and do some things, but we will start having the meetings more in the traditional sense in committee rooms, and members will be given the option if they want to participate via a video platform to be able to do so. But that's the plan going forward. That'll be the plan that we have, and again, depending where we are, this thing changes, every week. But fortunately, it's changing for the better, and so that's where we're going to get to. But what I'm hearing right now, and this is, I think it's important to strike a balance about the reopening of the state, is there are those who say, keep it shut down, even further restrict it. And then there are those on this side who say, go back to the way it was, open it up 100%. I don't think either of those positions are the correct path. What I think we should do, though, is, and I respectfully disagree with part of the position of the governor on this. I do agree that a phased-in opening of the state makes sense. I think you move and you do things and you see what happens as a result. But I do think that we could move more deliberately than the governor's proposal does. Example is, look at what's happening at our neighboring states. In South Carolina, that we can all, from where I'm talking to you, I can be in the South Carolina state line in 10 minutes. I can be there. Charlotte's the same way. You're just right down the road. And so I think we ought to look at what they're doing, where they're allowing personal services, but you have certain protections and you wear a mask. You ensure sterilization and things for the clippers and then the scissors and all that. And you do that, and you can protect the person cutting hair or the beautician, and you can protect the patron. South Carolina's doing that. Tennessee's doing that. What most other states are. I think North Carolina ought to. When it comes to restaurants, man, our restaurants are just taking it on the chin. It's terrible. Restaurants, hotels, anyone in the hospitality industry really just, my heart goes out to them. I mean, they really had a hard time. But what we need to do when it comes, for example, to restaurants is go in at, say, 50 or 60% occupancy, or ensure that it's spaced out enough so that you can maintain social distancing. You can make sure extra cleaning measures so that surfaces are clean, require the server staff and folks to wear masks, limit the size of the parties there. There are things you can do to allow business to get back to order, but not be reckless. I mean, you can do that. And if you look at the states that have done it, they've not seen a huge spike in deaths, in the spread of the disease, and in hospitalization. So you look at all that data, and it's safe for us to do it. In fact, right now, with where we are with the governor's current executive order, there's only 6 other states moving as slowly as we are to reopen. And all of those states had significant outbreaks, many more deaths, many more hospitalizations, and the models that have been used to justify some of these things by the executive branch simply and fortunately have proven not accurate, because all of those models predicted deaths in North Carolina in the tens of thousands, the thousands anyway. And fortunately, we've only had around, although tragic any death is, it only had around 500 deaths. So you compare 500 to the thousands that were predicted. And then, of course, you look, where were the deaths? They were mainly in congregate living centers, folks who were in their elder years, who had underlying health conditions. So that tells you that of the fatalities, that very, very few of those have been from what we call community spread. So you look at all that data, you put it together, and there is a case to be made to reopen. And then I could get into the fact of the delays of elective procedures, how people putting off things like mammograms, colonoscopies, these tests, having to put those off, how that can lead to even greater health problems down the road. I mean, we need to get these things going again, but they need to be done safely.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky issue, to your point. I mean, I was reading a story the other day where I think a plant in Missouri had over 300 cases of individuals who tested positive for the virus, but they were all asymptomatic. And so it just goes to show you how tricky this virus has been over time. But, the shutdown is obviously can't last forever. I know business is itching to open. And I know at least there's some light at the end of the tunnel as it relates to opening. And hopefully as the data continues to improve, we're going to be able to open more and more. And so, look forward to that. I know businesses are ready to do so in a safe way, right? I think everybody understands the gravity of this situation, that we can't just open without, taking precautions. And I think that's the right approach. And so, Mr. Speaker, thank you for your time. Thank you for everything that you're doing in the legislature and how well you represent the Charlotte region. We're fortunate to have a speaker in North Carolina who comes from the Charlotte area. You understand the needs of this region better than most, and so we certainly appreciate all your work and your leadership and your willingness to take time to talk to us today.
Yeah, thank you, Joe, for having me, and I appreciate the good work that you all do as well. And right over here in Kings Mountain, we're in the shadow of Charlotte. As Charlotte does well, so do we. And we know that, and I know full well a lot of the challenges that are being faced by this region, and know that we're going to do all we can in the General Assembly to bring in the resources needed to help and to be as supportive as we can. But do thank you very much. I'm glad to come back anytime.
Thanks for everything you do, and we'll talk to you soon.
Take care.